Welcome to the Dr. R. Craft CSS Font tutorial. CSS Font Properties can let you define the font family, style, boldness, and size of an element's font. Before going over any code examples, we first have to talk about CSS Font Families. When it comes to CSS fonts, there are two types of font family names. There are generic families, which are groups of font families with similar styles, like sans serif and fantasy, and font families, which are specific fonts like Helvetica and Copperplate. Here is a table showing the basic generic families, examples of font families that fall in those groups, and some additional details. Now, some examples of serif fonts are Times New Roman and Georgia. Serif fonts have small lines at the end of some letters, like you can see in Times New Roman font and also in the Georgia font. There's a little end after the A here, and same in this font. Now, sans serif fonts like Arial and Tahoma do not have small lines at the end of any letters. In fact, sans means without. Sans serif fonts don't have serifs. And next is Monospace. Some examples of Monospace fonts are Courier New and Monaco. Monospace fonts have the same width for each character. Now, there are cursive and fantasy fonts as well, but they're not going to be relevant in this tutorial. Now let's start using font families in practice. This paragraph is shown in the Times New Roman font, and this paragraph is shown in the Arial font. Now, if your font name contains more than one word, it needs to be surrounded in quotes, like this. You should specify several fonts as fallbacks, starting with the font you want and ending with the generic family name. So if no other fonts are available, then they'll just pick one from the generic family. Now let's move on to styling the font with the font style property. Now this property can be set to normal, which is how it's shown normally, italic, which is italicized text, and oblique, which is leaning to the side. Oblique is quite similar to italic, but slightly less supported in some browsers. Now let's learn about changing the font size of an element with the font size property, which sets the size of an element's text. This is important for some sites. However, you should not use this property to make elements look like other elements. Always use the appropriate tags like H1 to H6 for headings and button for buttons, etc. The font size can be an absolute size or a relative size. Absolute sizing sets the text to a fixed size, but does not allow users to change the text size in their browsers. It is good when you already know the size of the output, but bad for accessibility reasons. Relative size sets the text to a size relative to parent elements and allows users to change the text size in their browsers. Let's start by setting the font size to a fixed value with pixels. You can see this H1 element is 45 pixels, this H2 element is 30 pixels, and this P element is 15 pixels. However, it does not allow users to change the text size in their browsers, which is bad for accessibility reasons, as stated earlier. To fix these accessibility issues, many developers are switching from pixels to EM. To convert from pixels to EM, just divide the pixel value by 16, and then you'll get your EM value. Now, this sounds like it's going to work in all browsers, but unfortunately, older versions of Internet Explorer have a problem where the text sizing values are sometimes incorrect. So I've loaded up this code in Internet Explorer and changed the text size and you can see it becomes larger than it should when made larger, and when made smaller, it becomes smaller than it should. However, we can easily fix this issue just by setting a default font size for body. So we set the font size to 100%, and now our code will work just fine in all browsers. So now let's learn to set the boldness of the font with the font weight property. The font weight property can be set to normal, bold, bolder, lighter, or a number from 100 to 900, where 400 is the same as normal and 700 is the same as bold. Now with some fonts, it's not easy to tell the difference between some values. This concludes the CSS Fonts tutorial. Thank you very much for watching.